It turns out that the scratches didn't come from a bear after all.
My wife, Steph, and I have been together for about 2 years now. We met at college and hit it off right away. Steph was orphaned when she was very young, so she'd been raised by her grandfather until she went off to school and met me. I didn't know much about her grandfather other than that he was extremely protective of her, almost verging on paranoid. Still, he passed away before I got the chance to meet him, so I never really gave him much thought other than to comfort Steph. That was until we found out that he owned something like 900 acres of forest. Steph was his only living descendant, so she was given the deed. And the key ring pertaining to the house that she'd never seen before. What a 23-year-old girl was going to do with all that, I don't know. All I know is that when she told me about her new land, I knew we had to go check it out. As we drove up, I asked her if she'd seen this house before. She said, "Listen, I don't even know this land existed. I have no idea why Gramps would keep it from me." It was pretty clear that she was taking his death still pretty hard. No wonder, really, he'd basically raised her after all. The drive up into the mountains from the college took a couple of hours. The forest was thick with pine and oak trees growing close to the road. The further we got from civilization, the worse the roads got. Potholes, broken branches, even grass had begun to sprout out in some places. Our plan was to stay the night at the house. But if that didn't pan out, we'd brought a tent as well. Our GPS had us turn off on a gravel road. This road wound and twisted around turns and rocky outcroppings. It was pretty clear that it was leading us down into a valley. After a half an hour or so on this new road, we saw the house out in front of us. The house had clearly been abandoned for decades. Steph was clearly disappointed. Well, I guess it was too much to hope that someone would be caring for it all this time. Stretching my legs after all that time in the car was really nice. Steph walked up to the house to check it out. I warned her that the ground might be rotted out and to be careful. I started walking around the house and took another picture. I came back to the house and walked in the front door. The inside was a mess, all rotten wood and dirt. I was honestly surprised it was still standing at all. I stuck my head back outside and my eye caught on something. There was a tree growing just to the right of the house. I saw 4 long, deep claw marks in it, a few months old at least. That was when I heard Steph shriek. I ran back around to the front of the house and saw her standing in front of something rotten. When I took a closer look, I saw it was a deer carcass. I told Steph that we were most definitely in bear country. The only thing was, it looked like the deer had been cut open with a bunch of razor blades. Bears don't normally do that. The sun soon set after that. We took out our tent inside the house and found a nice flat spot to set it up. I busted out my gas grill and made a couple of hamburgers. We were sitting in our camp chairs inside the house and feeling pretty good by the time it got completely dark. Steph was looking at me pretty amazed. I asked her why she was so surprised. "It's just, I've never been camping before. It's different than I imagined." She looked down at her phone. Less cell service, at least. I decided to ask some more about Steph's grandpa. "Why do you think he never told you about any of this? And why didn't he ever take you camping?" I asked. "I don't know." I went on for a while about how cool I thought the property was. Plans for future parties with friends, bonfires, all that. The clouds had rolled in, so all the light was just from our little lantern it had brought. Pretty soon we headed inside the tent, zipped up the door, and we were ready for bed. Steph had already fallen asleep when it happened. All the sounds from outside, all the crickets and birds and owls, all stopped in an instant. Laying in my sleeping bag inside the tent, the silence was deafening. That's when I heard it. A distinct clicking noise echoed out from the forest. I lay in silence trying to guess what kind of animal might have made that sound. It was so loud that Steph actually woke up next to me and asked what it was. I told her I didn't know. Then I heard the clicking noise again, extremely close. So close, it seemed like it might be right next to the house. I slipped out of my sleeping bag, still inside the tent, and I grabbed my camera. I crawled up to the tent door and zipped it down as quietly as I could. Then I stuck the camera out into the darkness and took a picture. In the flash, I saw a hand reaching through the broken window of the house. It almost looked human, but it was deathly white. It had long claws extending from each finger. Through the window, I saw what looked like a human silhouette with two bright, yellow eyes staring in towards us. I can't be sure, but it looked like there was blood around its mouth. I pulled the camera back and zipped the tent door closed. Steph sat up. "What is it?" she asked. I moved next to her and covered her mouth with my hand. My heart was racing and I felt all of the hairs on my body standing up. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. Silence. For a long moment, I heard nothing. Then the clicking sound echoed from where I knew the front door of the house was. Steph stared at me, her eyes clearly confused and afraid. She put her hand on mine and tried to pull it away, but I shook my head and didn't take it off. Silence. Again. I strained to hear, but nothing. For what must have been 2 minutes, I sat with my hand on Steph's mouth. Then I heard the clicking from just a few feet outside our tent door. I have no idea how it got so close without making any sound. I froze for a moment. Then, as quickly as I could, I reached into my pants, laying on the ground, and pulled out my car keys. I hit the unlock button twice. My car's horn beeped loudly from where we'd parked in front of the house. Silence again. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, I heard the clicking from out where my car was parked in front of the house. The clicking echoed out a few more times, but each one was further and further away. After a half an hour or so, the crickets started back up and the forest sounded alive again. Steph stared at me. "What did you see?" I told her to get dressed and be ready to run. We got dressed in the tent and I opened the door. We ran to where my car was, jumped in, and sped away. I didn't stop until we reached home. The next morning, I went out to my car and saw scratch marks on the hood. Has anyone had experiences like this? I'll continue to update the story if anything new happens.